Title: Tide Caller. Year: 98,750,000. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The city of Skyville glittered like a crown of gold on the cliffs of Aurelian. Wealth echoed in every stone, but joy was a stranger. The teacher, who forgets nothing, walked the winding streets each morning, watching hollow smiles trade hands like currency. In her classroom beneath the cliffs, she taught not math or science, but the myths no one wanted remembered. One name echoed loudest: the Tide Caller, a hero who vanished the day Skyville embraced its riches to steer destiny. She whispered to her students, "You must release the illusion of control." Chapter 2. An old storm returned, not in clouds or wind, but in silence. The sea withdrew. Children no longer dreamed. The teacher walked the old paths, seeking the place the Tide Caller once summoned waves with their voice. She found the cavern sealed by time and fear. There, scrawled in coral and bone, "Abius does not gleam. It breathes." She sang, not well, but truthfully. The sea answered. Chapter 3. Skyville trembled. Tide came not to destroy, but to cleanse. The golden facades washed away, and from the sea rose a figure cloaked in foam and stormlight. The Tide Caller returned not to punish, but to remind. A new scene was built not of gold, but of listening. Its highest building, the school, etched above the door, to steer destiny. You must release the illusion of control. Title: The Echoes of Unseen Threads. Year: 98,650,146.15. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The teacher who forgets nothing walked across the ruins of a drowned city, her footsteps careful not to stir the ghosts. Her name had long since been replaced by stories, and even those were whispered, never spoken aloud. Every lesson she'd ever taught echoed in her bones, from the first lie told to spare a heart to the last truth delivered too late. Beside her moved a man with no temple and too many prayers, the reluctant God, born of regret and clothed in prophecy. His hands still trembled from the shaping of a world he never wanted to touch. They had come not to save, but to see. Beneath the dust, the city's pulse still beat. Children played in silence. Elders painted memory onto broken walls. In a market rebuilt from ash and tin, a woman sold songs in jars' lids, sealed with hope. "This place remembers," the teacher said. The God nodded. "So must we." They gathered the people, not with declarations, but by sitting. In the center of the plaza, the teacher lit a circle flame not to warm, but to witness, and the reluctant God listened. He heard every choice recurrent. Chapter 2. In the village of Barn, storms were measured by the names they whispered. When the teacher and the God arrived, a gale howled the syllables of long-dead kings. The villagers did not bow, nor did they ask questions. They simply handed over their stories. Each tale was carved into wood and floated down the river. The teacher read them all. One spoke of a man who cursed his brother, only to birth a legacy of drought. Another told of a woman who gave bread to a stranger and birthed 3 generations of healers. The teacher whispered, "What you give returns in shapes your hands aren't ready for, but your soul remembers." That night, she wrote a new story. It was not about heroes. It was about threads, the reluctant God woven into the wind. And when the villagers woke, the sky did not speak, but every dream that followed carried a truth that could no longer be ignored. Even the trees leaned inward, listening. Chapter 3. At the northern edge of the world stood a monolith carved from questions. It bore no symbols, only indentations made by the hands of those who once sought answers. The teacher and the God stood before it, empty-handed, yet heavy with knowing. Here they would leave no mark. Instead, they knelt. The villagers who had followed from Varn and the ruined city stood behind them. No songs, no rites, only silence. The reluctant God touched the monolith, not to reshape, but to reflect. And in that reflection, he saw the consequences of every miracle denied, every mercy postponed. The teacher spoke, not to the people, but to the threads between them. "We are not stories alone," she said. "We are stitches." And the monolith pulsed not with light, but with memory. For the first time in years, the God wept. One tear fell upon the stone and vanished, not absorbed, but shared. Somewhere, a stranger woke remembering a life they had not lived. Somewhere else, a wound closed without reason. No saviors rose, but the people walked home differently, as if every step might ripple. And the wind, gentle now, carried no names, only reminders. Title: The Meadow Where Time Waited. Year: 98,557,692.31. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. and Rise of the Zodiac series, 2025. Chapter 1. The unfound shepherd never hurried. His flock was scattered across valleys no map dared chart, and yet he walked with the certainty of one who trusted the wind. His staff bore no adornment, just the grooves worn by time and touch. Some said he spoke to stones. Others claimed he walked between seconds. At the edge of a forest where trees grew in spirals, the spirit of the wild stirred. She was not seen so much as felt like a scent from childhood or a song remembered too late. Her voice belonged to rivers, and her anger to fire. They met at a crossroads where no signs stood. "You do not seek your flock," she said. "I do," he replied, "but not all at once." She circled him barefoot on moss. "The world moves fast. It forgets slow things." "Then let it forget," he said, planting his staff. "I will still remember." The wind changed, and in the trees something waited. Chapter 2. The villagers of Ralem had lost their patience. Crops withered, water trickled, and children whispered fears of a curse. When the shepherd arrived, they scoffed. No one had time for a man who watched clouds more than soil. The spirit of the wild lingered at the village edge, unseen. He whispered to the weeds and stirred dreams in sleeping dogs. The shepherd was offered food only after silence. He accepted both, and walked their fields, alone. He did not till. He did not sow. He simply knelt and listened to the dirt, to the silence beneath complaint, to the memory of rain. That night he told a story, not a parable, a memory, a mountain that moved only when it forgot it was stone. The spirit listened. She did not speak, but when the villagers woke, their fields had changed, not sprouted, but softened. Chapter 3. Patience is not stillness. It is tension endured without fracture. The shepherd remained in Ralem as the season shifted. Children watched him carve wind patterns into bark. Elders grew quiet when he passed, unsure whether to mock or revere. The spirit of the wild visited him beneath a storm. Watched oak. "You wait too long," she said. He smiled. "For just long enough." She sat beside him. They said nothing, and as if cued by silence, the first green tendril broke through dry earth. Not a miracle, a promise. The villagers gathered. Some wept, not for the sprout, but for the time they almost lost by rushing through it. The shepherd turned to a boy who had once called him useless. "The more you tense against life," he said, "the more brittle you become." And the spirit of the wild kissed the air. The winds changed, and every clock in Ralem slowed just enough to notice. Title: The Lantern Beneath the Ash. Year: 98,461,538.46. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac series, 2025. Chapter 1. The moth to the flame lived where mountains breathed fire. Her wings bore the scent of scorched jasmine, and her footsteps trailed sparks that never landed. Once mortal, she had been unmade, and remade in pursuit of joy, a pursuit that left embers in her wake. She arrived in the hollow vale searching for a thread long lost. The one who binds threads awaited her at the vale's heart, weaving light into paths and shadow into warnings. He knew what she had forgotten, but the chase for happiness could burn the very world she meant to warm. They met in silence. He offered her no welcome, only a loom. "Every joy has a thread," he said. "And every thread," she replied, "a flame." Below them, villagers lit lanterns to ward off grief. They believed in hope bought at the cost of memory, but the stars above knew better. The moth looked upward. "Time doesn't erase pain," she whispered, "but it offers hands to carry it." She did not yet know those hands might be her own. Chapter 2. Through the winding paths of the vale, the moth moved with purpose, but every step bent the threads beneath her. The one who binds threads followed, unseen, repairing what he could. His hands ached with each unraveling caused by her fire. She reached the fountain of light, where dreams were traded for peace. A crowd had gathered to sip its glow, their eyes hollow with longing. The moth hovered above them. "Why do you drink?" she asked. "To forget the weight," one said. "To feel something pure," another added. She felt her wings burn brighter. The binder appeared beside her. "And what of the price?" None answered. So he reached into the fountain and drew out not water, but the echoes of broken promises. The glow darkened. "They are not ready," he said. "Then I will carry them," she answered. He shook his head. "To carry a thread is to feel every cut it binds." But still, she drank and wept fire. Chapter 3. When she returned to the village, her wings were ash and her eyes were stars. She spoke not with words, but with presence. Children gathered at her feet, and the old ones turned their backs, afraid to see what they had chosen to forget. The one who binds threads sat beside her. He handed her a lantern. "This will not guide you," he said. "It will remind you." She took it and held it high. Within its light flickered not joy, but stories of choices made in desperation, of kindnesses twisted into debts, of love abandoned for bliss. The villagers gathered again. This time, no one drank. Instead, they listened. The moth to the flame stepped into the square and laid her wings down. From them rose a map not of roads, but of reckonings. One child asked, "Are we still allowed to be happy?" She knelt. "Yes," she said, "but not at the cost of each other." And above them the stars shimmered. They remembered. What silence dare not speak? Title: The House That Answered Nothing. Year: 98,365,384.62. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The masked one entered the House of Echoes with no name and no shadow. The doors closed behind him without sound. Within, nothing moved, yet everything listened. They said the house answered questions no one dare ask, but only in riddles, and only if you left a piece of yourself behind. Outside, the stars wheeled silently. Inside, he found her. The one who fell from the sky twice sat at a long table filled with mirrors. Each reflected a different version of her. None smiled. "You seek truth," she said. "Not turning." "I seek release," he replied. "Then prepare to lose what binds you." He reached into his chest and removed a single black ribbon. His name. It vanished into the floorboards. The first door creaked open. Chapter 2. They walked through 7 rooms, each one darker than the last. In the room of threads, voices whispered forgotten promises. In the room of ash, dreams turned to dust unless spoken aloud. He kept silent. He spoke only in questions. By the time they reached the chamber of becoming, the masked one had lost all memories of the world before, but he remembered how it made him feel. Afraid. The one who fell from the sky twice knelt at the chamber's center. "This is where your mask will break," she said. He hesitated. "It has kept you safe," she continued, "but it is also what keeps you from becoming." He removed it. There was no face beneath, only light, raw, unclaimed. "I say yes to becoming," she said, "is to dissolve every fearful no." And the chamber sighed, not with closure, but with welcome. Chapter 3. He walked out of the house alone, not empty, but rewritten. The one who fell from the sky twice had stayed behind, not trapped, but chosen. She tended the echoes now. Outside, the village he had once feared to enter stood waiting. Its people remembered his silence, not his voice, until he spoke, and the air changed. He spoke of creation not from stone or fire, but from surrender. He built no temples, raised no banners, only a garden, one that grew where nothing had dared bloom before. He did not call it home, but others did, because in its center stood a house that answered nothing, and in its silence everything changed. Title: The Price of the Unasked. Year: 98,269,230.77. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The cloaked reminder arrived at the gates of Olmar without announcement, her presence marked only by the silence that fell wherever she walked. Her cloak bore no insignia, just the folds of shadow where forgotten truths hid. Behind her trailed the dust, bound twin, a boy of 2 voices and half a name, shackled not by chains but by obedience. Olmar was a city of banners and bellows, where law echoed louder than wisdom, and every answer was memorized. Questions were currency in short supply. Citizens recited pledges as prayers, their eyes glazed with conviction. The reminder entered the central plaza as the evening anthem rang out. She did not kneel. She did not speak. The guards moved to stop her, but paused. Something in her silence felt like a verdict. The twin stood behind her, trembling. "They say truth is what's written," he whispered. She turned. "Then who holds the ink?" And the anthem faltered. Chapter 2. In the hall of doctrine, truths were engineered like bridges, functional, tested, and sterile. The cloaked reminder passed through its arched corridors unnoticed, until she laid a single feather upon the speaker's chair. It glowed faintly with memory. The dusk-bound twin watched from above, his hands tied with invisible thread. He had once asked too many questions. No, he asked none. The speaker of law entered. "You defy order," he said. "I defy silence," she replied. From beneath her cloak she withdrew a shard of mirrored glass. It reflected not faces, but moments when obedience had killed clarity. A soldier's hesitance buried, a child's cry overruled. A prayer rewritten, the speaker gestured for guards. The twin moved first. He stood between them. "She asks what I forgot to." The reminder nodded. "The thing you resist most is the very thing that frees you." And the glass broke not from force, but understanding. The shard sang. Chapter 3. By dawn, the hall was empty. The city awoke to missing banners and walls etched with questions. Not accusations, not rebellion, just the first cracks in a silence too long endured. The dusk-bound twin walked alone through Olmar. People stared, then followed, not out of allegiance, but out of curiosity. At the central tower, the reminder waited. She held no weapon, no scroll, just the broken mirror, its pieces reframed into a window. One by one, citizens stepped forward to look through it. Each saw themselves, not as they were, but as they might have been had they asked why instead of how high. A child touched the frame. "Can I still ask?" The reminder answered, "You always could." and the banners never flew again, not out of shame, but because no wind carried lies anymore, only voices, finally rising. Title: The Mechanism of Becoming. Year: 98,173,076.92. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The puzzled-hearted one was built, not born. They awoke on the third day of a festival no one remembered starting, inside a town where every hour was celebrated and every rule were written nightly. This was Tikkun, a city of endless ambition and manufactured delight. Bells rang when dreams were declared, and horns blared when they were abandoned. The puzzle-hearted one walked among the revelers, every heartbeat clicking in calculated rhythm. Each step was chosen, each breath accounted for. Beneath the mirrored lake at the city's center, the clockmaker waited, an artisan of delay and consequence, whose gears turned the world without applause. They met only when the city's main bell skipped a beat. "You walk like someone trying not to be late," said the clockmaker. "I walk like someone unwilling to reset," replied the puzzle-hearted one, and above them the sky ticked slightly askew. Chapter 2. Tikkun's Grand Council of Reinvention gathered to discuss the motion to abolish calendars. "The future," they said, "is better met unprepared." The puzzle-hearted one stood in the square below, holding a map of schedules they had handed over years. No one looked. The map was outdated the moment it was finished. "You resist the joy of flexibility," said a juggler with a mare's sash. "I respect the cost of forgetting," they replied. At the lake, the clockmaker began to slow the current. One by one, shopkeepers forgot their open hours. Children napped through revolutions. Lovers proposed too late. The puzzle-hearted one did not gloat. They simply lit a lantern at precisely sunset and sat down. The city's laughter faltered. Then the clockmaker surfaced. "Pain is not the barrier," he said. "It is the toll to the next version of you." And Tikkun, for the first time in its history, blinked. Chapter 3. They say the city cannot learn without falling. Tikkun did not fall. It staggered beautifully, absurdly, into itself. The Grand Council was dissolved and immediately rebranded as the Assembly of Maybe. Parades were postponed, then celebrated for being postponed. But in the lake's reflection things had changed. The puzzle-hearted one stood beside the clockmaker. Together they tuned the bells not to ring at whim, but in rhythm with intention. Children began waking early. Artists found satisfaction in refining instead of declaring. And those who once danced for distraction now danced for direction. The puzzle-hearted one no longer checked their map. They became the mechanism others aligned to. Not in tyranny, in tempo. And when the next festival began, it started with a silence held long enough to remember why it mattered. Just long enough to become. Title: The Ashwalker. Year: 98,076,923.08. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The war between the Ember clans and the Skyborn had lasted so long that no one remembered why it began. Ash blanketed the Valley of Silence, where once rivers ran, and dreams had long fled to higher ground. The Ashwalker, a lone figure cloaked in soot and silence, crossed the valley with no banner, no blade, only a scroll inked in fire and sky. "Risking the fall is how forward begins," he muttered, stepping through forbidden lands. Chapter 2. At the border of both realms he was caught. The Skyborn demanded allegiance. The Ember clans demanded retribution. He gave neither. Instead, he knelt before both fires and poured water onto the scroll. The ink bled, revealing not words but images. A child of both clans, once lost to the storms. He had been the bridge and the wound. Now he chose to become the healing. Chapter 3. Together they rebuilt the Valley of Silence, stone by stone, song by song. No tree was signed, no leader crowned, but the fire burned with warmth now, not fury. The winds carried dreams again, and carved upon the highest cliff where the Ashwalker once vanished into dawn. Risking the fall is how forward begins. Title: The Root of the Unspoken. Year: 97,980,769.23. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The spirit of the wild had no name in the city of Veleport. She came when the mist thickened, when windows frosted despite the sun, when questions died mid-breath. Her footsteps stirred roots beneath the stone. Veleport was a city built on concealment. Every roof had a second layer. Every mirror held a second reflection. Its people spoke in softened tones, careful not to disturb the old truths buried beneath their streets. And yet, in the market square stood a man wrapped in vines. The vine-clad prophet. He said nothing, but the vines bloomed every time someone lied near him. The spirit approached. "You hide too well," she said. He nodded. They have forgotten how to be seen. And you? I remember. She touched his shoulder, and the vines trembled. Chapter 2. The Council of Quiet convened beneath the glass hall, debating the fate of the vine-clad prophet. Some called him a menace, others a mirror. No one could agree, because no one wanted to admit what his presence revealed. Meanwhile, the spirit walked Veilport streets, gathering the lies people told to themselves. She folded them into leaves and fed them to the roots. A boy followed her. "Why do you feed lies to plants?" he asked. "So they grow into truth," she said. At dusk, the prophet spoke. 3 words. "Dig beneath me." The people hesitated, but one girl stepped forward with a spade. What they found was not treasure but testimony. Loans, journals, ledgers, records of betrayals and cover-ups once thought forgotten. And the vines bloomed white. "It is the truth that wounds," said the spirit, "that finally frees you." Veilport did not cheer, but it listened. Chapter 3. In the weeks that followed, the city did not fall. It unraveled, not in chaos, but in confession. Walls of secrecy crumbled into bridges of honesty. The Council of Quiet dissolved, replaced by an open circle in the square where the prophet still stood. He no longer needed the vines. They had rooted in others. The spirit of the wild prepared to leave. "You gave us pain," a woman said. "I gave you what was already yours," she replied. The prophet stepped forward, now veiled not by plants, but by choice. "We feared what was already happening," he said. "And now? Now we begin." The spirit walked into the mist, and a city bright now with wounds named and seen did not forget her, because what is named cannot hide, and what is free cannot return to chains. Title: The Ghost General. Year: 97,884,600. 115.38. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. Long after the battle had ended, the Ghost General walked the quiet roads of what used to be home. The townsfolk pretended not to see him, their eyes always busy with things that didn't matter. But children still whispered his name with awe and fear, unsure whether he was legend, ghost, or man. "You are not a seeker, you are remembering," the wind told him, carrying voices only he could hear. Chapter 2. He had once led the rebellion, fueled by righteousness and the fire of unity. The betrayal had worn the mask of loyalty, and it came from within. He survived, but trusted not. His brother-in-arms had traded peace for power, and now every step he took felt like walking backward through a dream that no longer welcomed him. Chapter 3. A final letter arrived one day, not from a friend, not from an enemy, from a boy whose father had died in that war. It read, "You spared my village. I remember. My mother says we owe our lives to the man in gray." The Ghost General folded the letter, looked at the empty road ahead, and smiled faintly. He was not healed, but he was no longer lost, and sometimes that was enough. Title: The Dance of Chosen Walls. Year: 97,188,461.54. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The honor-bound had never broken a promise, not to kin, not to creed, not even to a stranger asking the time. His village carved vows into stone, and his name had more etchings than most. They called him reliable, safe, predictable, and slowly they stopped calling at all. At the edge of the village lived the shield maiden, a former mercenary turned blacksmith. Her armor hung like a ghost above her forge, and she spoke to no one unless they brought her something broken. One day the honor-bound brought her a bell. "It doesn't ring," he said. "It's not supposed to," she replied. "Not until someone risks it." He frowned. "You mean damage it?" "I mean trust it to hold." That night he tied a bell to his door and waited. Chapter 2. The village prepared for the trial of boundaries, a rite of passage where paths were chosen and limits affirmed. Participants built fences around plots of land meant to symbolize their future jobs, families, beliefs. The honor-bound's fence was straight, high, perfect, but he watched the shield maiden. She built a crooked line. One side was open. "That's not a boundary," he said. "It's a welcome," she answered. He asked to walk her path. They argued, then laughed, then built a gate together. Others whispered. But that night, the bell on his door rang. Not loud, but enough. The next morning, he redrew his fence and danced inside it. Chapter 3. After the trial, the village convened to record legacies. Most spoke of caution, of safety preserved. When the honor-bound stood, they expected more of the same. He surprised them. "I used to think freedom meant doing everything right," he said. "Now I think it means choosing the right risks." Murmurs, frowns, a few nods. The shield maiden stepped forward. "True freedom isn't absence of limits," she said. "It's choosing the ones you can dance within." The honor-bound removed one stone from his old vow wall, then another. He left only 5. Enough. The village did not cheer, but they watched, and over time, Others danced, not wildly, just freely. Within walls they chose, together. Title: The Thorn-Cloaked Guide. Year: 97,692,307.69. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. There was a time when the name Everin carried weight in the world. He had conquered boardrooms, shaped laws, and lit fires in every hall of influence. But no one remembered the boy who had drawn maps in the dirt, dreaming of freedom for all. What you curse is broken may be the only place your light knows how to shine, whispered an elder who had seen too much and lived too long. Everin listened for the first time in decades. Chapter 2. He walked away from the spires and into the dust. Villages lay ruined by decisions made in towers far away. And yet, in these places, hope still grew like wildflowers between the cracks. He began to teach, to build, to listen, not as a leader, but as a companion. And the people came to call him something new. The Thorn-Cloaked Guy, not for pain, but for the care with which he now moved among their wounds. Chapter 3. Child handed him a note one day, folded neatly, sealed with wax. It was from a former rival who had watched Everin's fall with glee, but the letter was humble, full of questions and hints of change. Perhaps the world wasn't just bending under his weight, it was learning how to carry many. He smiled, tucked the letter into his coat, and looked out toward the next town. Balance had no throne. It had a road, and Everin now knew how to walk it. Title: The Roots Beneath Perfection. Year: 97,596,153.85. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The one who was written bore no scars, only revisions. Her skin shimmered with the edits of time, each line a change she had accepted or survived. She walked the stone way of Hallier not as a pilgrim, but as a caution, her steps too precise to be trusted. The keeper of the forgotten threshold waited at the road's end, seated before a gate that led nowhere until someone opened it from within. No key, just memory. You've returned, the keeper said. I never left, she replied. The gate remained shut. Perfection was the price of passage, but her silence cracked, and from that crack a root emerged. Twisting, living, the road behind her shook. Truth buried sprouts roots in your silence, and Hallier began to bend. Chapter 2. The citadel of instruction stood beyond the threshold, filled with archivists who copied ideals until their fingers bled. Here, the one who was written once studied, once conformed, once was erased. She entered again, not as student, but as storm. You cannot return, they warned. I never truly arrived, she said. The keeper followed, gathering fragments she left behind. A thread of regret, a page of unspoken rage, a broken hourglass. In the scriptorium, the masters waited. Will you recite? No. Then you are not perfect. I am not finished, she said, and the hall quaked. Pages flew, statues cracked, and silence, at last, was heard. It spoke not of order, but of possibility. Chapter 3. Outside the citadel, the people gathered, not to worship, to watch. The one who was written stepped onto the plaza. Her skin no longer gleamed. It flaked with bark, with soil, with the memory of unburied truths. The keeper stood beside her. You didn't open the gate, he said. I grew through it. He nodded. You were not written wrong, he said. You were paused. She raised her hand, not in declaration, but in offering. The people knelt not out of reverence, but release. And the roots beneath the city's split stone, not to destroy, to remind that seeking perfection had hidden what was already whole. And now truth bloomed wild, untamed, and finally seen.